Good afternoon, distinguished delegates. Our meeting will start with this special event by India, Brazil, and South Africa. I now call on the Director of the UN Office for South-South Cooperation to lead us through this event. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Excellencies, I'd like to thank our partners for your presence and your engagement with the South-South Trust Funds and projects managed by the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation. As most of you know, UNOSSC manages 4 trust funds: the Perez Guerrero Trust Fund, which is sponsored by the G77, the UN Fund for South-South Cooperation, with its recent largest contributors being China and Republic of Korea, the India-UN Development Partnership Fund, and the India-Brazil and South Africa Facility for Poverty and Hunger Alleviation, or what we call the IPSA Fund. These mechanisms bridge the fruitful policy-level discussions of this week's high-level committee on South-South cooperation with catalytic results on the ground. I couldn't explain it better than, going through a documentary about the fund. If we can display that, please.
Ajudar outras pessoas a escolher esse método de longa duração, que é o método de ação de longa duração, que dá mais espaço.
go back to my country, my research work will be helpful to generate the new drug for not only Bangladesh but also for other part of the South Asia.
With this short video showcasing the different initiatives that have been covered and supported by the IPSA Fund, and given that some of our partners are pressed with time, I'm going to take this opportunity to invite our partners to unveil the report. We do a collective picture and then we move ahead with our agenda. This is supposed to be easily to remove. Yes, there we go. Then. Thank you. Thank you very much. As I congratulate our partners for their leadership and visionary contributions to the South-South cooperation, I also want to stress our commitment as UN Office for South-South Cooperation to emphasize the scalability of these projects, rendering them instrumental for broader and sustainable transformation. I'm also delighted to report that with the IPSA Fund, the report covers showcases of 13 projects implemented in 18 countries. The government and the people of India have been generously contributing to 2 of our trust funds, IPSA, jointly with Brazil and South Africa, but also the India-UN Development Partnership Fund, a 150 million financing mechanism, which is an exemplary model of cooperation projects that are nationally owned and driven by horizontal partnerships. It's my pleasure today also to have with us and to give the floor to Her Excellency Mrs. Ruchira Kamboj, the Permanent Representative of India, for a few words about this partnership. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, I'm indeed very happy to join the launch of the IPSA Fund Annual Report for 2022, along with my colleagues from Brazil and South Africa. I thank the UNOSSC for taking this initiative. It is heartening to note that since it became operational in 2006, the IPSA Fund has supported 42 projects across 36 countries, allocating US dollars 46.5 million. These projects, I must say, have transformed people's lives in places such as in the Palestine, Guinea-Bissau, and the Cabo Verde. South-South cooperation is built, as we all know, on the principles of equality, mutual respect, and shared development. It recognizes that every nation, regardless of its economic status, has unique experiences, knowledge, and expertise to contribute. Successive IPSA declarations have derived strength from these principles. As far as my country, India, is concerned, a nation rich in diversity, history, and cultural heritage, India has emerged as a prominent advocate and participant in the realm of South-South cooperation. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's call for a One Earth, One Health approach underlines our continuing commitment to the Global South. The year 2022 marked 75 years of India's partnership with the United Nations, given India's foundational belief that our own development is inseparable from that of the rest of the world. We continue to partner with the UN and its agencies in elevating South-South and triangular cooperation. The India-UN Development Partnership Fund, to which you alluded to, a first ever single-country South-South initiative at the UN, has developed a portfolio of 66 development projects in partnership with 51 developing countries in a short span of just 5 years. India's commitment to development cooperation, which focuses on the LDCs, the LLDCs, as well as the SIDS, has been expanded considerably in recent years. Over 300 concessional lines of credit worth over US $31 billion have been extended, while a number of grant and aid projects aggregating around US $4 billion have been implemented in key social and infrastructure sectors. The Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program has offered scholarships for training courses on a broad range of subjects to over 160 countries. In closing, I will say, dear colleagues, that I'm sure that the IPSA Fund will continue to strengthen the spirit of South-South cooperation that is people-centric, demand-driven, and directly benefits communities that are the most vulnerable. Thank you.
I thank the Permanent Representative of India for her message and for the continuous partnership. Let me turn also to South Africa. South Africa has been playing a key role in promoting South-South cooperation in science, technology, and innovation, and the engagement of South African institutions such as the Agricultural Research Council in the implementation of IPSA Fund projects. It has proven to be very impactful and helpful to peer countries. I'm now honored to give the floor to Her Excellency Mrs. Masood Joyini, Permanent Representative of South Africa.
Thank you, Madam Director, Madam President, my fellow IPSA countries representatives, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues. I thank the UNOSCC to share this moment with you. South Africa's contribution in supporting and strengthening a multilateral approach to South-South cooperation is centered on forming partnerships with other developing countries through formations such as the India-Brazil-South Africa, IPSA. The Trilateral IPSA Forum has been a great example of a blueprint for South-South cooperation. This partnership seeks to strengthen the collective multilateral efforts at uplifting people out of poverty and hunger. We have undertaken particular initiatives to bolster efforts in addressing triple challenges of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. It is our resolve to continue playing a supportive role in advancing a progressive development agenda. The IPSA Fund is a world-class facility for poverty and hunger alleviation, which leads the way in addressing the Sustainable Development Goals in sectors such as safe drinking water, agriculture and livestock, solar energy, waste management, health, and youth development issues, amongst other issues that we address. The fund has demonstrated its versatility in responding to requests for assisting during COVID-19 times, like the approved WASH initiatives in African countries. It is important to maintain that flexibility in responding to new challenges. The IPSA Fund seems to be in a good place as the fund's footprint is growing larger around the world. As like-minded emerging economies, we recognize that we have a collective role to play in addressing and correcting imbalances in the global economy. As climate change continues to accelerate, putting us further behind in the fight against poverty and vulnerability, and as livelihoods across the global south have experienced sharp regress, we will continue to identify replicable and scalable projects that can be disseminated to interested developing countries as examples of best practice in the fight against poverty and hunger. In conclusion, we are pleased to showcase results on the ground, putting into evidence why the UN system and member states engage in partnering countries in efforts to promote, frame, and enable delivery on the South-South agenda. Through our collective effort, working together, I am certain that we will be able to confront the challenges and seize the opportunities that this new age of development presents. I thank you.
I thank the Permanent Representative of South Africa for her message, for the partnership, of course. Let me turn to Brazil. Through the Brazilian Cooperation Agency, ABC, Brazil has been facilitating the development of Brazilian expertise and institutional collaborations as additional contributions to IPSA Fund projects, such as sharing the Brazilian model to boost school feeding programs while also enhancing the livelihoods of smallholder farmers. I have the pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Luis Felipe Rosa, representative of the Permanent Mission of Brazil. The floor is yours, sir.
Chair, Madam Chair, Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Brazilian government, I would like first to thank the United Nations for this opportunity to talk about the IPSA Fund and its achievements. First of all, I would like to highlight the ability of the IPSA Fund to meet the demands of developing countries across the Global South, particularly the emphasis of its portfolio of projects focused on least developed countries. The IPSA Fund is an example of how countries from the Global South can contribute to the World Development Agenda through the sharing of their good practices, experiences, and expertise, in addition to financial resources. I would also like to emphasize the fact that over time, the IPSA Fund has been undergoing a process of continuous improvement, adapting to the needs posed by time and remaining powerful in meeting the demands it receives in supporting global development. I would finally like to underscore that the umbrella project signed between the Government of Brazil and the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation, the HLCSSC, has two current country projects in different phases of implementation with the resources allocated by the Brazilian government through the Brazilian Cooperation Agency, ABC. The first one is an initiative in Angola developed in partnership with UNICEF in the field of basic sanitation, launched in May 2020. In the scope of this project, Brazilian technicians have visited Luanda to start implementing the training plan for Angolan technicians. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the project has evolved with different activities carried out by virtual tools. In 2023, we plan to move forward with the next phase of virtual and regular training. The second initiative will take place in Congo in partnership with the World Food Programme. The Board of Directors of the IPSA Fund approved the project in 2022. This year, after the signature of the document, we expect the technical activities to start. Brazil looks forward to keeping the continued partnership with India and South Africa in supporting South-South cooperation initiatives in all its forms. I thank you very much.
Thank you. I thank the representative of the Permanent Mission of Brazil. We will continue with the UN Fund for South-South Cooperation partner remarks. Let me start with our partners, China, who since 2000 has been the lead contributor to the UN Fund for South-South Cooperation and has supported UNOSSC's global flagship South-South Cooperation initiatives, connecting southern centers of excellence and promoting city-to-city cooperation, technology transfer, and capacity development in advancing sustainable development. I'm very pleased to invite Madam Minister Hongbu Wang, Permanent Mission of China, to take the floor.
I thank you, Madam Director. Mr. President, at present, the world is witnessing multiple global crises which are intertwined, and developing countries face enormous challenges in economic development, livelihood improvement, and achieving the 2030 Agenda. Today's exchange of the best practices and successful experiences in SSC is of great significance in bringing together the wisdom and strength of all parties and promoting the deepening of SSC. We welcome this China is a staunch supporter of and important contributor to SSC. Since the founding of the PRC, China has been providing various types of development assistance to help other developing countries achieve common development. In recent years, we've been stepping up our assistance through bilateral, multilateral channels and actively participated in South-South and triangular cooperation in trade, investment, financing, production, capacity cooperation, and capacity building to support developing countries in accelerating the implementation of SDG agenda. In September 2021, China solemnly proposed the GDI, which prioritizes most pressing needs of developing countries, including fighting the pandemic, poverty reduction, food production, green cooperation, etc. In order to promote the digital skills of developing countries and shrink the digital gap, in 2022, China and the office conducted a project which is for capacity building for cross-border e-commerce of poverty alleviation and sustainable development for youth in developing countries, jointly launched by China and office. And this has been well received. And more than 1,000 participants and over 90 developing countries participated. And the two sides also will co-organize 3 workshops in China this year on how to promote sustainable development in developing countries through cross-border e-commerce. And in 2021 September, we proposed the Global Development Initiative, which focuses on the most pressing needs of the developing countries so as to crystallize consensus. At present, we have put forward a lot of initiatives to implement, and we created the South-South Cooperation Fund and increased our investment in the China-UN Fund, and make sure that the South-South cooperation and the SDGs are incorporated in the development strategies of the developing countries. South-South cooperation is a way for developing countries to help each other. China values the important coordinating role of the office and encourages it to continue to play a greater role in promoting SSC among developing countries. And we are ready to continue to support the office and contribute to the accelerated implementation of the 2030 Agenda in developing countries. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister, for your message. Let me turn to also another important partner, the Republic of Korea, who has been among the largest contributors to the UN Fund for South-South Cooperation and a champion of triangular cooperation since 2010, with the establishment of the Facility for Capacity Development for Poverty Reduction in Education, Science and Technology through triangular cooperation through a partnership with the Ministry of Science and ICT. Now it is in a third phase of cooperation. The Republic of Korea is sponsoring this project, which is enabling the deployment of innovative technologies that contribute to the water, energy, food nexus in the lower Mekong River basin countries through demonstration pilots that improve nutrition, sanitation, and livelihood. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Sanjin Kim, Deputy Permanent Representative of the Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Director Dima Al-Khatib, and a very long and nice introduction for my country. It is my truly privilege to take part in this consequential launch event for the annual report of the IPSA Fund and to reflect on our enriching partnership experiences with the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation. The 21st session of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation has emphasized the crucial role and inherent value of South-South and triangular cooperation as pivotal mechanism in achieving sustainable development goals. This is accomplished by facilitating knowledge transfer and providing capacity building support, particularly during these challenging times. Within this framework, the Republic of Korea holds science, technology, innovation, and knowledge sharing in high regard. recognizing their critical importance in realizing SDGs. Since 2011, Korea, standing as the second largest contributor to the UN Fund for South Cooperation, has actively supported UNOSSC's efforts to advance and enact technical cooperation among developing nations. This is carried out through the ROC UNOSSC facility, an initiative spanning 3 consecutive 5-year programs. The success of the facility resides in its integrated approaches engaging a broad array of key stakeholders, including central and local governments, academia, and private sector as well. These comprehensive strategies have facilitated the creation of well-defined, thoughtfully designed, and effectively implemented initiatives that are finely tuned to the unique needs of each country. Drawing on the lessons gleaned from the first and second phase of capacity building through these integrated approaches, the third phase aims to bolster the development of sustainable and resilient resources usages in the countries of Mekong River Basin, namely Laos PDR, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Thailand. This utilizes the water, energy, food nexus approach to enhance the Mekong region's ability to respond to the climate crisis in collaboration with the Korean initiative, the Mekong River Commission, and the Mekong Institute. Joint research on the WF nexus has been undertaken, with the significant findings of this research disseminated at the Global South-South Development Expo in 2022. Furthermore, pilot projects designed to transfer technologies to address WF-related issues are scheduled for implementation this year. My delegation firmly believes that the mutual cooperation and partnership-based learning that occurs between the Republic of Korea and the Mekong states will provide valuable insights into how South-South and triangular cooperation can aid countries in addressing transnational challenges. I thank you.
I thank the Deputy Permanent Representative for his message, and thank you also for the partnership. The testaments today have been really inspiring, and I really want to thank each one of them for the long-term partnership, but also the impactful collaboration. This has really transformed lives at the level of the countries. So with this, I thank you all, and I pass it again to Mr. President. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
I thank the Director of the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation for steering us through this event, which was most helpful and probably gave us a wealth of knowledge from which we can draw. Thank you very much. Excellencies, I call to order the 5th plenary meeting of the 21st session of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation. Now, before taking up the recommendations of the working group embodied in the draft decisions before the High-Level Committee, I shall, with the committee's permission, give the floor she's there.
You can invite her.
Okay.
And then you can make the excellencies.
Yeah. No, I can sit over there. Yeah. Yes. I shall, with the committee's permission, as I said before, give the floor to the Associate Administrator of UNDP, Mrs. Usha Rao Monari, to make her closing remarks. she's here. Can I also call the rapporteur to join us on the podium? Madam Rao Manari is with us now. Madam Manari, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, Mr. President. Mr. President, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to first thank you, Mr. President, and the Bureau of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation for your leadership in nurturing a meaningful intergovernmental policy dialogue on South-South cooperation for development. During this 21st session of the High-Level Committee, you've given momentum to multilateralism and solidarity to confront the confluence of global crises. You have reiterated the contribution and potential of South-South and triangular cooperation for accelerating recovery from the pandemic and for the achievement of the SDGs, particularly for countries in special situations, including least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and the small island developing states. UNDP reiterates its dedication to working very closely with you over the next 2 years to put in action the resolve expressed in your decisions and strategic vision. We will deepen our efforts to support member states through South-South and triangular cooperation, initiatives at sub-regional, regional, and inter-regional level in collaboration with partners, and will report progress during the next high-level committee session. I would like to extend our recognition to member states, intergovernmental organizations, representatives of UN organizations and entities, and civil society organizations for your meaningful participation in this session of the High-Level Committee. I also wish to thank the keynote speakers, panelists, respondents, and the moderator for sharing their perspectives on how South-South and triangular cooperation can be optimized as a modality for accelerating recovery from the pandemic and responding to other global crises in achieving the SDGs. The session was enriched by the sharing of best practices of innovative collaboration, including regional and cross-regional initiatives among nations of the Global South, and the impressive results of these South-South and triangular cooperation partnerships. Participants highlighted critical areas for cooperation, such as green recovery, climate action, agriculture, development and food security, economic policies and reforms, debt strategies, trade, digitalization, and health. Access to technologies, innovation and intellectual property, and capacity development in the area of vaccine manufacturing and diagnostics were noted as crucial to facilitate pandemic preparedness. The measurement and evaluation of South-South cooperation was another key aspect of the thematic discussion. Despite symmetries and capacities in developing countries to quantify South-South flows, the new conceptual framework on measurement of South-South cooperation and SDG 1731 does mark a breakthrough. As indicated by member states and the United Nations family at large, it's evident that we're pursuing a collective action and collaboration in our work on South-South and triangular cooperation through the implementation of the UN system-wide strategy on South-South and triangular cooperation for sustainable development, as well as through monitoring and reporting on parameters to track its successful implementation. Simultaneously, in line with the UN Development System repositioning efforts, UNO-SSC in close collaboration with the Development Cooperation Office, the regional commissions, and the relevant interagency mechanisms, remain deeply committed to providing practical hands-on tools and guidance to the UN country teams and UNDS entities to enable them to respond to the growing demand for such cooperation from member states and their national and regional partners. South-South and triangular cooperation keeps proving over and over that solidarity wins over working in isolation. Excellencies, UNDP continues to give high priority to South-South and triangular cooperation in its strategic plan, which specifically highlights that South-South and triangular cooperation is integral to how UNDP thinks and understands the future of development, as well as by hosting and enabling the UNOSSC to effectively assume its role as the UN system-wide focal point on such cooperation. We greatly appreciate your words of recognition for the commitment and work of the office. Finally, as we approach the critical midway point to the timeline for the Sustainable Development Goals and convene key platforms such as the SDG Summit this year and the Summit of the Future next year, your messages on the significant role of South-South and triangular cooperation need to be amplified so that we do not lose more time to accelerate progress on SDGs and leverage all modalities to ensure that no person and no country is left behind. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the Associate Administrator for her insightful concluding statement. Excellencies, on behalf of the High-Level Committee and on my behalf, let me express our gratitude to the Associate Administrator and through her to the Administrator, Mr. Eichensteiner, for the strong support that UNDP and UNOSSC gives to South-South cooperation. We are very confident that the priority cooperation by the UNDP will continue and be strengthened in the future. This commitment is of particular significance in the light of the emphasis many delegations have given on enhanced South-South cooperation during the sessions we are concluding this afternoon. Equally important, Excellencies, are the ideas and practical recommendations which were expressed yesterday on the subject of accelerating the recovery from the coronavirus disease pandemic and the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development through South-South and triangular cooperation. Thank you very much again, Associate Administrator, for your presence and those remarks which were very helpful. We shall now take up item 6 of our agenda, namely the adoption of the report of the working group. We will start by listening to an introduction of the report of the working group by its chairperson, the Ambassador for Burundi and the Permanent Representative, His Excellency Zephyrin Marinathanga. The floor is yours, Excellency. Just before His Excellency begins, may I also remind you that given the fact that we have only 6 p.m. to consider those recommendations and adopt the report of the High-Level Committee, I would urge delegations who wish to suggest amendments to the draft decisions to be brief in their comments and specific in their suggestions so that we can proceed and conclude our deliberations in an expeditious manner. I now invite the chairperson, Ambassador Marinathanga. You have the floor, sir.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. Sir, it is my honor to communicate to the plenary the results of the deliberations of the working group of the 21st session of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation. In addition to being its president, I recognize that working group also elected me to be its rapporteur. So I am submitting the report to the plenary as president rapporteur of the working group. Sir, the group officially began its formal work on the morning of the 1st of June, yesterday. The work was greatly facilitated by the very useful informal negotiations which preceded its formal proceedings. Our work was on the basis of a draft decision introduced by Ms. Marian Hamdouni of the Permanent Mission of the Kingdom of Morocco as facilitator. I am now pleased to submit to you, Mr. President, and to the High-Level Committee the results of the deliberations of the working group. They are contained in draft decisions SSC/21/L5 and SSC/20/L6. They are submitted in my name as chair cum rapporteur of the working group. Nevertheless, I want to express deep gratitude to all the delegates, especially our facilitator, Ms. Mariam Hamdouni, from the Permanent Mission of the Kingdom of Morocco, for the work done by the group. I would like to say thank you to you, Mr. President, and to all coordinators who greatly, and I emphasize greatly, contributed to the outcome we are submitting to you today. In particular, I wish to thank all colleagues in the working group for their hard work, for their spirit of compromise, for their diplomatic tact and skills, which they have shown and which enabled us to reach today's agreement. On behalf of all my colleagues in the working group, I have the honor, sir, to commend to you these two draft decisions to the High-Level Committee for adoption. Thank you very much.
I thank the chairman of the working group, Ambassador Manirathanga, for his report. And I must especially thank, in a very personal way, to His Excellency for stepping in at a very short notice to take up this very onerous obligation. Thank you very much, Excellency. Yeah. The High-Level Committee will now consider the recommendations of the working group introduced to us just now by the chairperson, His Excellency Ambassador Manirathanga. The draft decisions are contained in documents SSC/21/L4 entitled Decisions Adopted by the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation at its 21st session. The committee will first turn its attention to the consideration of draft decision 21/1 entitled South-South Cooperation. Does any delegation have any comments on this draft decision? I see none. May I take it, therefore, that the High-Level Committee wishes to adopt Draft Decision 21/1 entitled South-South Cooperation. It is so decided. I now invite the committee to turn its attention to item 7 of the agenda, namely the proposed provisional agenda for the 22nd session of the High-Level Committee, contained in Draft Decision 21/2. The draft provisional agenda is submitted to us pursuant to the rules and our established practice. Are there any comments on this proposal contained in 21/2? I recognize the Russian Federation. The floor is yours, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any comments on the draft decision 21/2, but I do have a comment regarding decision 21/1, which we just adopted by consensus. If I may, I would like to state my comment now. Mr. Chairman, we would like to express our gratitude to you for your leadership over the course of the preparations and throughout the 21st session of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation. It was an honor for us to support you as a member of the Bureau, in our capacity as a member of the Bureau. The general discussion, the thematic discussion, as well as the decision which we adopted today, have once again demonstrated the importance of, as well as the demand for, a partnership between developing countries, underpinned by solidarity. Over the course of the next 2 years of our term, we intend to work hand in hand with you and to continue striving to draw attention to South-South cooperation and its achievements at the United Nations. As the committee has taken a decision, we cannot but clarify our position on paragraphs 14 and 15 of the preamble. In these paragraphs, the committee takes note of the reports of the UN Secretary General and the Administrator of the UNDP. We regret to note that the aforementioned reports contain an analysis of the repercussions of the situation in Ukraine, an analysis that was conducted from a position of bias, including on the basis of inaccurate assumptions, which have not been borne out by time nor by the actual situation. Let me repeat that attempts to ascribe to events in Ukraine all of the world's woes, including setbacks encountered in the fight against poverty and hunger, these are not only not objective, they are destructive, as they distract the international community from getting to grips with the true causes of global crisis phenomena, which we're witnessing in the socio-economic sphere. The causes are comprehensive and have built up over a lengthy period. They include the multifaceted repercussions of the COVID-19 pandemic, including the repercussions for global value chains. It's also the Western countries' short-sighted financial policy, a policy directed at combating the pandemic. In fact, as part of this policy, trillions of unsecured dollars were printed, which spurred inflation, resulted in interest rates being ratcheted up. Plus, given the fact that the global economy is interdependent, this burden was placed on countries in the South, which are already heavily indebted. Another reason is the poorly thought through push for an energy transition, which began to go awry already in the autumn of 2021. Plus, there are the corrosive consequences of illegal unilateral sanctions both against the Russian Federation and other states, which Western states have been imposing for many years now. These sanctions have resulted in a disruption to trade routes, supply chains, and transactions. Another cause are the myriad conflicts which have been raging for years now, which the Western powers have been directly involved in. For those reasons, we're compelled to dissociate ourselves from the aforementioned provisions contained in the reports I mentioned earlier. Thank you for your kind attention.
Statement, the contents of which have been duly noted. Thank you. Anyone else? Right. May I take it that the high-level committee wishes to approve the provisional agenda for the 22nd session of the high-level committee as proposed in document SSC/21/L4, decision 21-2 as amended? I see no objection. The provisional agenda is approved. Distinguished participants, I now open the floor on item 8, other matters. Are there any other matters that delegations wish to bring up at this time? I see none. We have therefore just thus concluded the consideration of item 8 of the agenda. We will now deal with the adoption of the report. The committee will now take action on the last item on its agenda, which is the adoption of the report of the high-level committee on its 21st session. I give the floor to the rapporteur of the high-level committee, Ms. Kerita White, to present her report. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Mr. President, thank you for giving me the floor. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to introduce the draft report of the High-Level Committee on the work of its 21st session. At the outset, I wish to express my gratitude and that of my government, the government of Barbados, for the honor this committee has accorded us by electing me as rapporteur of this important body. The High-Level Committee on Self-Cooperation, a subsidiary body of the General Assembly. Mr. President, the draft report of the committee, which I now submit to you,
is contained in document SSC/21/L.4. It has various chapters. A prominent place in the report will be given to the two decisions which resulted from the deliberations of the committee's working group and which the committee has just adopted. The other chapters of the report relate to the high plenary segment, including the opening of the session, the introduction of the various reports, and the general discussion in which many member states, groups of states, UN agencies, as well as NGOs and other bodies and entities participated. Next, as a summary of the very stimulating thematic discussion in which we had two distinguished keynote speakers and 6 eminent panelists and 3 discussants. There is a report on the deliberations of the working group under the leadership of the chair, His Excellency, Mr. Zephyrin Manaratanga of the Permanent Mission of Burundi. The outcome of their work is, of course, the 2 decisions adopted by the committee this afternoon. Then there is a chapter on the provisional agenda of the 22nd session of the committee, organizational matters, including the election of the Bureau, the attendance, the agenda, and the organization of the committee's work. The annex contains the list of participants and the list of documents before the session. Mr. President, with your permission, I would like to make a few observations about the finalization of the report. Out of necessity, the draft report was prepared under pressure of time and with the information available to us during the main part of the session, as well as a number of words constraints. Now that the session is being concluded, we need to proceed and complete the various parts which are currently marked to be completed. Mr. President, with that clarification, allow me to suggest that we follow the practice which we have adopted successfully in previous sessions. This procedure is that delegates and other participants be given several days in which to review this draft report and to submit to me or the Secretariat any amendments they wish to propose to the narrative and other procedural and organizational parts. The committee would thus authorize the rapporteur to finalize these narratives and organizational parts, as usual, with the support of the Secretariat. I hope that distinguished colleagues will agree to this methodology, which has expedited our work in the past. Finally, Mr. President, I wish to thank all of delegations and other participants for the friendship and cooperation which they have shown me throughout this session. I am very grateful. I must also express my gratitude to the UN Conference Services and especially to the translators, editors, and other technical staff and consultants. Moreover, I thank particularly the officials of the United Nations Office of Self-Cooperation, under the able leadership of its director, Ms. Dima Al-Khatib, who worked tirelessly to help me prepare the report before you. I am deeply indebted to them for their invaluable service. Allow me to conclude by assuring you that we are ready to receive from participants any proposals or corrections or amendments to this draft report, which I have now the honor to submit to the high-level committee for approval. Mr. President, thank you very much.
I thank the rapporteur for her report and for a job very well done, notwithstanding the constraints of time. Thank you. The distinguished delegates, may I now invite you to direct your attention to the report of the high-level committee as contained in document SSC/21/L4 and its addenda 1 and 2. The report of the committee is composed of 3 parts. Firstly, the decisions adopted. Secondly, the procedural and organizational part. And thirdly, the sections narrating the substantive decisions. We have just now already adopted the first part, namely the decisions one by one. As for part 2, the procedural and organizational sections, and Part 3, the narrative parts, contained in documents SSC/21/L4 and its 2 addenda, I wish to propose to the high-level committee the procedure that we have hitherto followed, namely, inasmuch as these sections contain organizational matters and statements of positions by speakers, any delegations that so wish may submit additions, revisions, amendments, or other changes to the rapporteur, who, with the assistance of the technical secretariat, would be authorized to finalize the text. Excellencies, we shall thus therefore ensure that the narrative part adequately reflects the views of delegations as they have expressed those views in this committee at this session. Does the high-level committee agree to this procedure? Yes. I recognize the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation. The floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, we fully support your approach. We wanted to clarify. Is there a deadline for submitting such additions? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Shall I respond to that and say what's the deadline?
The deadline for the report is 19th, so 1 week before.
The deadline is the 19th.
Yes.
Yes.
12th is when ours is the 19th, so by 12 would be good.
12. Okay. I'm told that there is a deadline, and for the Secretariat, it is the 19th. It would be comfortable if it can be submitted by the 12th of next month. I hope that would be comfortable for you and satisfies your requirement. Thank you. Right. Is there anyone else who wishes to say anything more? I see none. It is so agreed, subject to the clarification we made just now to the Russian Federation. On that basis and with that understanding, may I take it that the high-level committee wishes to approve the report of its 21st session? There being no objection, the report is adopted. Excellencies and distinguished representatives, they say that all good things must come to an end. And in keeping with that cliche, the 4 days that we have spent so profitably, I believe, has also come to a close, and the curtains must come down on these proceedings this evening. We have just concluded a very meaningful intergovernmental discourse on South-South cooperation. We have shared our best practices very transparently and openly, I must say. I was surprised at the frankness in which and the friendly atmosphere in which it was the advice was extended. There's no doubt whatsoever that South-South cooperation, right, this broad framework for collaboration and exchange between our countries, politically, economically, socially, culturally, environmental and in the technical domains, looms large, and there is plenty of space to doing so. And that part of the value of that whole process clearly, I can say, lays in its primary purpose to empower our countries to shape, as I see it, homegrown responses rather than relying on external interventions to development problems. I think I won't be wrong, and perhaps these experts won't probably join issue with me if I was to say that it was at this discussion accepted without dimmer that green economy as a tool enables all countries to mobilize a more efficient allocation of resources to achieve sustainable development, particularly by shifting investments from business as usual to green economies. So South-South cooperation, therefore, was seen can be a valuable source of investment into green economies. It was also recognized in the course of the discussions that the rising flows of foreign direct investments mean a great potential for developing countries like ourselves to gather together to ensure that such investments are building the foundation for a green economy. As we all agreed, without, as I said, dimmer, the global landscape of development cooperation has changed drastically in recent years. The era of one-way cooperation has become outdated, clearly, as countries of the South are engaging in collaborative learning models to share innovation, adaptability, and cost-efficient solutions. So in this context of our discussion, South-South cooperation perhaps has become the expression of collaboration, if I was to say that, and partnership amongst our countries. However, we must also perhaps be realistic. South-South cooperation still faces several challenges that in some cases are related to institutional and technical capacities of our own countries, particularly those of middle-income countries, which include, amongst other things, improving the quality of information, particularly data, reinforcing results orientation, a better alignment to national systems and development. So in those areas, in my view, cooperation can benefit from the lessons learned in the North-South cooperation, perhaps, especially in the areas of mutual accountability and transparency. Before I conclude, having said those things, permit me the honor of thanking all of you, each and every one of you, delegates, for your active participation and your presence. You personally and your nations that you represent are the lifeblood of South-South cooperation. May I thank the administrator of the UNDP, the chief architect and the driver of this event, and the associate administrator, and our indefatigable director and her super enthusiastic, energetic team for their commitment to the cause of the South-South cooperation. How could I not perhaps pay tribute to my bureau and the members of the working group and the chair and Ambassador Zephyrin, who engaged in a super efficient performance in producing the decision that we adopted, and to my own colleagues in my own mission, without whom my task would have been doubly difficult. Thank you. They rose to the occasion, notwithstanding the several responsibilities they have been tasked with. So thank you once again, and let's hope that we can get together as a force, and we must become a force, and rise to new horizons of progress for the South-South, in the South-South mechanism. May I now give the floor to the Director, who will address the high-level committee. The Director, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Let me echo the President and take the opportunity to congratulate the Bureau of the High-Level Committee for a successful 21st session under the leadership of its President, His Excellency Mr. Peter Mohan, my three peers who have expertly guided us to the conclusion of this session. Thank you, Mr. President. I thank all the distinguished delegates, negotiators, and panel presenters who have delivered important statements on South-South and triangular cooperation over the past 4 days. We are honored to have welcomed participants from over 80 member states, including at the ministerial level. We're also very grateful to all member states, intergovernmental organizations, UN entities, civil society, private sector, and IFIs for sharing their perspectives, experiences, and prospects with respect to South-South and triangular cooperation throughout the plenary sessions and thematic sessions of the high-level committee. It is important to note that stakeholders around the world have been following our discussions this week via the UN webcast as well as on social media. The reach associated with the committee's hashtag HLCSSC has reached over 750,000 on Twitter alone, so congratulations to everyone. Distinguished delegates, the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation is committed to promoting and facilitating South-South and triangular cooperation for development on a global and United Nations system-wide basis. The Office acknowledges all the needs and offers by the countries and the UN entities. Furthermore, today we have taken decisions that will guide us and will guide our work moving forward. We will work closely with the HLC Bureau under the leadership of the President to review and assess how to best meet your aspirations towards a global and UN system-wide progress on support for South-South and triangular cooperation. In the coming years, we will continue to support and strengthen the UN interagency mechanism for South-South and triangular cooperation as a platform to review progress and lessons learned regarding the implementation of the UN system-wide strategy on South-South and triangular cooperation. We have also, as mentioned before, taken steps to accelerate the finalization of guidelines and training modules to support the integration and mainstreaming of South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation at country and regional levels in coordination with UN country teams, the Development Coordination Office, the UN regional commissions, and the United Nations interagency mechanism on South-South cooperation. This will definitely help us move the agenda of South-South cooperation forward. We will also further enhance our partnerships and build alliances with various partners from the Global South and North in order to address common development challenges and respond and recover from the crisis that we are facing today. We have, during this session, some member states and other stakeholders have acknowledged the contribution of the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, and I want to acknowledge with thanks their generosity and their acknowledgement of our efforts and our work. The Office will endeavor to meet your expectations in fulfilling the work that you have set for us. However, we cannot achieve that without the continued support from the Member States, the active engagement and support of all UN agencies, specialized agencies, funds and programs, regional commissions and other partners from the private sector, IGOs and civil society, including with the think tanks. Let us take this opportunity together to take South-South cooperation to the next level in building networks, supporting policy making, facilitating exchange of knowledge and best practices, supporting projects through our managed trust funds, and raising awareness and advocating for the catalytic role of South-South and triangular cooperation. I would like to also extend my most heartfelt gratitude and thanks to UNDP, our generous host, and for the support I have received since I have assumed my role. Very grateful also to the UN Secretariat, the UNDP leadership and colleagues, and my own team, who have worked relentlessly and tirelessly over the past few months to ensure that this event was successfully organized. Mr. President, as your high-level committee secretariat, we are committed to supporting you and your Bureau to address the needs of the Member States with the utmost diligence during this 21st session. Thank you.
Thank you, Director, for those comments. Distinguished delegates and excellencies, this whole initiative is yours. And that being the case, it's nothing but right that the last word must be yours. Is there any delegate here who wishes to take the floor? Right. I see none. If that is the case, I can only say, distinguished delegates, with all what we have heard from all of us here, It is with a sense of satisfaction and gratitude, I would say, for the cooperation of all of you that I declare the 21st session of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation being closed.